Whether you're home or away, stay connected to your team with T-Mobile, the network that covers 99% of people in America. They've been investing billions to light up their best network ever. From your backyard to a sold-out stadium, get T-Mobile's best coverage yet. Plus, with T-Mobile, you get a price lock guarantee, so they won't raise the rate of your talk, text, and data, ever. There's never been a better time to switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today. Coverage not available in some areas. Price lock exclusions like taxes, fees, select promos, and third-party services apply. See T-Mobile.com.
Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. It's game week 28 in the books. International break is here. It's time, Brandon, for one of my favorite podcasts. I guess we do this 4 times a year, don't we? One for each quarter. Mm-hmm. It's Kings of the Game Week. It's our quarterly review of the FPL season. Narrative, Brandon. We're here for narrative. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good, Josh. Yeah, let nobody say we're anti-monarchy here at the Always Cheating Podcast, right, because Kings of the Game Week is one of our favorite podcasts. It's where we go. I think we're starting here in Game Week 17, post-World Cup. I have to get my head straight before we get into the Kings of the Game Week, because it has been a sports bonanza in our lives. You and I got together on Friday, took the day off work just to do some like minor league online sports gambling and watch NCAA basketball, March Madness, lots of fun. Then we have the combination of our beloved FPL and Premier League and the FA Cup, which the FA Cup, the Fulham Manchester United match somehow managed to overshadow all of the bananas things that happened with free hits and captaincies.
I felt like I jinxed you a little bit. If anyone doesn't know, Brandon's a Fulham supporter, and around the 60th minute mark, I wasn't trying to jinx you. I was just like, wow, like go Fulham. You know, I was just like, this is awesome, and I wanted somebody to cheer with, and then 10 minutes later, you're basically like, could not have scripted a bigger meltdown.
It wasn't you who jinxed. It was our friend James. Some listeners would know him as Red Dagger, who texted me and said, start looking for tickets to Wembley. And I'm like, dude, why did you send me this text? That was really the nail in the coffin. But yeah, it's funny, like watching amateur athletes in like US college basketball, you think you'd see bigger meltdowns than what you saw at like the highest level of English football. But no, what Fulham did was on par, if not more embarrassing than our multiple relegations in the last decade. So I just really going to take us a while to get over that.
73rd minute, 74th minute. I mean, it's tough because I don't think realistically Europe's on the table. So that was really even just getting to Wembley for the semifinals would have been a huge accomplishment. But what's done is done, Brandon. It's still done. A great season for Fulham.
We must move on.
Mitro is still a hothead that will never go away. That's with us.
His first red card for the club, though, let it be said. He's got this reputation as a hothead. I do think it could be good news. Yes, the guy is a crazy Serbian, and that is a matter of fact. I do think it maybe was a good thing for a mid-table club, like a mid-sized club who was getting too big for their britches. Yeah. And like you can't just immediately belong in this place. And I think that's what, from Silva to Mitro, acting like they were owed some certain attention from the referee. I mean, Chris Kavanagh has been a thorn in Fulham's side, but it's just like Fulham just focus on the details here. I went to the table of the Premier League. I was like, 39 points? 40 points. That's the benchmark. Are we not gonna get another point the rest of the season? I don't know. But that's your FA Cup lot, and that has bearing on the FPL calendar, as we know from our Lord Ben Krellen. That sort of solidifies the blanks that we're going to be looking ahead to in Game Week 32. Because Manchester United did beat Fulham, they will blank in Game Week 32, along with Manchester City, as well as Brighton. And there is one other club, Josh, remind me who that is.
Chelsea.
Yes, Chelsea, of course.
Man United, Man City. I know, I'm looking at my squad right now. It's going to be an interesting decision what to do with some of those Man United and Man City players. I mean, Haaland, a lot of people dropped Haaland. going into 28, right? If they didn't free hit, then it was not that anyone really wanted to do it, but there was kind of a logic behind it. Go for Watkins. He did get an assist, so it worked out, somewhat okay, and he does double in 29. But the temptation to bring Haaland back is going to be very strong because they play Southampton in Gameweek 30 and Leicester in 31. So if you have a free hit, then it's fine. You could just free hit in 32 and you're kind of all set and you keep rolling. If you don't have a free hit, which you and I both won't now because of our... I think we can. Well, I don't know. In my opinion, it's a failed strategy. It's worked out a little better for you, and I guess I've got to wait to see how Game Week 29 pans out. But I basically hate everything I've done since the start of Game Week 26. I am disgusted with my team, Brandon. I need this international break to reset a little bit. I'm saying this. I'm doing fine. When Saka went off today, and I was like, what the heck was I thinking? Not captaining him. I was like, I must have doubled my rank here, and it turned out I was fine. I'm at 12,700 overall. So obviously having a great season, but I'm just really frustrated because I felt like I had an opportunity to really pull off a big swing. And I'm on 2 red arrows 2 weeks in a row. And that's just sort of not what you want when you play chips 2 weeks in a row, is to actually be in a worse position than you were before. So, but we'll see. We'll see if Game Week 29 redeems things a little bit. I think right now, I've got 3 players from Brighton. I've got no Chelsea, so at least I'm a little covered on that front. And I got 3 Man United and 1 Man City. So I've got 7 players. So basically, I have to decide what to do for the next couple of weeks. But we have an international break, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to look at price changes, anything. I'm just going to wait at least a full week, see who gets injured. Someone's going to get injured and it's going to screw everything up. But wait a week, see where we are, and then, make decisions from there.
Yeah, for me, I guess it's a little bit more of a positive story. I did free hit this game week and ended up with a 12K green arrow. I'm up to 54,393. But you're right. I share your feeling that what could have been. And we're going to talk through Kings of the Game Week is actually kind of instructive when you're thinking about free hits, because you have this idea in your head when you free hit that you're going to basically bring in the Kings of the Game Week. All 11 of your starters are going to be the top scorers. And that obviously is just not going to be the case. You would think you'd get some of them. Spoiler alert, we only had 1 King of the Game Week for Game Week 28, and that was Saka. Neither of us captained him. You did think that the 120 minutes in the Europa League on Thursday night, losing on pens, was going to have some sort of an impact on how Arsenal would play against Palace, but it didn't. They looked amazing, sensational, and just so happened that we both had Odegaard, who was one of the attacking players who didn't manage to get a return. I've been doing some complex math here of, did I hurt myself with the free hit? Because the reason I played the free hit was I was going to be short 3 starters, and then it was 4 starters when we learned that Saliba was out with injury. So I feel like then it kind of became pretty cut and dry for me to play the free hit just to get 4 additional players out. Had I just captained Saka, who I already had, could I have gotten away with it? Well, who I brought in on my free hit, Kane captaincy, so that's 12 points, plus Son, and my big winner on my free hit was Emi Buendia. And that was like
minute too. Yeah.
I mean, that is just a stroke of luck, and you could call it jammy, lucky, I don't care. I'm taking these 8 points. That really did give me the green arrow. But right there is 25 points that I brought in just for my free hit. Yep. I feel like it's maybe a qualified success, but we'll call it a success, and I'm happy to move on. And I agree. As I said on my wild card going into 27, this is all predicated on how the bench boost in 29 goes. And if bench boost 29 is a success, then I think my wild card free hit bench boost gambit will be great. I have a couple of issues going into the international break. It's Danny Ward, who is going to be my bench goalkeeper for 29. I guess he has to go. Okay, pretty obvious. Bring in Steele from Brighton. But as we just mentioned, Brighton blank in 32. And I feel like I have 6 players who blank now in 32. And I feel confident that I can transfer my way into a strong team for 32 without having to worry about that. But this goalkeeper situation along with Saliba are really my only pain points for the break.
Yeah, and of course, just because this season is, I mean, it's kind of crazy, and I guess we can get into this a little bit with the Kings of the Game Week, but the entire second half of the season has just been blanks and doubles. I mean, we have not had a ton of normalcy so far, Brandon. A word invented during the presidential run of Warren G. Harding. I'm sure you knew that, but
good knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a made up word for his presidential campaign. But I'm yearning for normalcy, and I guess we're going to get it looking at Ben Crellin's charts here in game week 38. Great. So the final game week of the season, we should have a nice little reset there. I guess game week 30. But even then, you're kind of planning for 31, 30, So, but let's enjoy game week 30. That'll be fun. I think I'll be just back, Brandon, from Mexico City then. So that'll be a nice time. Yeah. So, all right. So that's where we are. My 5-sentence summation of game week 28 is I don't want to talk about it. So I think that's actually 6 words. But I don't want it. That's one word. Just don't want it together. So that's where we are. Let's keep things positive though, Brandon, because Kings of the Game Week is a very fun episode. And I think what I like about it is that it makes you realize that you have to enjoy the journey of the FPL season. When you go back and you go game week by game week, you realize all these fun stories, the narratives, the counter narratives, emerging stars, disappointing legends. You get it all when you look back, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle if you don't take a second to look around, Brandon, to sort of lightly paraphrase Ferris Bueller. So anyway, so the international break is here. We'll do a proper Game Week 29 preview and discussion next week. There's not a lot of value, in my opinion, in doing it right now because let's see who gets injured, and then we'll go from there. So quick thank you, though, to Rolf Sund, our newest Patreon supporter, and our manager of the month is Craig Jackson. Brandon, he's the top scorer in our Patreon league for the month of April. He's also a producer patron. So how do you like that? A double
well done,
for
Craig.
Mr. Jackson. And I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah. He's going to be flying high too. Craig is after that 4-2 victory over Wolves. Are Leeds back? Are you a believer? Jack Harrison got a lot of stick from a lot of people this season.
It's just like last season when Leeds was in trouble, and Leeds can score goals. And I feel like that's when you're in a relegation battle, if you're a team that can score goals, at least occasionally, you're going to get some wins, right? And it's the teams who can't score goals that struggle to even get wins. And they're the ones who get the 0-0 or they're the ones who get the 1-1s when you need like the occasional 4-2 like this. I mean, Leeds can't defend at all, but as long as they keep racking up these 4-2s, they'll be fine.
Well, thank you to our Patreon supporters, and also thank you to the BBC, who invited the Always Cheating podcasters on Radio 5 last week. We joined Alistair Ball-Bruce, Chris Sutton, Premier League winner, Golden Boot winner, and Statman Dave for Fantasy 606. You can actually listen to me and Josh join the 606 gang for last week's fantasy chat on the BBC 606 feed. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, especially to Ali for reaching out to us and setting that up. Thanks. It was great to meet Statman Dave because Statman Dave, he's just like us. Like he's the fantasy community entry point into that show. And then, of course, Chris is I think you would liken him, Josh, to the John McEnroe of Fantasy 606.
Yeah, he has a wryness that I enjoyed experiencing. So really fun episode, and really fun to appear on an episode of their pod. And so definitely check it out. Listen to ours, give it a download, and then go check that out. Right. So if you're listening right now, you probably gave it a download or a stream already. Does anyone download pods anymore, Brandon? A stream. But let's say maybe you're in a coffee shop right now and the barista is playing this episode loudly over the speakers. Very common thing, Brandon, that you and I have heard hundreds of times in cafes here in Brooklyn.
Do you ever go into the cafe and ask for the aux cord, Josh, so you can play your favorite podcast for the entire coffee shop? You say, give me the aux.
I'm gonna start doing it from here on out. So let's take a break. We'll get back, and we're gonna go from, I believe it's game week 17 to 28. It's the third quarter review of the FPL season. Coming right back.
Hey, listeners, did you hear that a Lionel Messi trading card recently sold for more than $500,000 on Golden Auctions? Golden is the leading and most trusted destination for some of the most significant pieces of sports and pop culture collectibles, and, better yet, it's not just for high-ticket items. Golden's new always-on marketplace and weekly auctions start at just $5. That means collectors of all kinds can enjoy the same quality, convenience, and seamless user experience that Golden is known for. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, grade, or vault, Golden has something for everyone. Your one-stop destination for the love of collecting. Hey, let me put it to you this way. Over the last 3 recent market crashes, sports cards have held stable value. While the S&P 500 fell by an average of nearly 17% and bonds took a small hit, sports cards actually saw overall positive returns. Interested in selling your collectibles? Now is the time to do so. Golden is offering no marketplace fees for items under $10,000. List your items on Golden's marketplace now to enjoy this limited time offer. Head over to golden.co to get started. That's golden.co, GOLDIN.co.
And we're back. Kings of the Game Week. I think we've spent enough time introducing it in what it is. I guess the one thing we didn't note is that Kings of the Game Week is at this point it's like a throwback to when the team of the week was sponsored by Budweiser, the king of beers, and they called it the Kings of the Game Week. They have stopped sponsoring it for whatever reason. I think this is before our pod started to give it the extra juice, Brandon. I think if we were doing these Kings of the Game Weeks pod, it might still be sponsored right now. I think there's a possibility there. And actually,
not enough people were talking about it.
Yeah, and we'd be always cheating. Brought to you by Budweiser. So everyone lost here, Brandon.
If only. Yeah. But I think our idea when we were getting ready for this episode, Josh, was maybe FPL needs more sponsorship. Now, if you go to the FPL site, at the bottom of the screen, you see all of the Premier League sponsors. Hublot,
Pennzoil,
Panini. We need an FPL sponsor to throw some cash at FPL Towers so we can get this freaking site to upload a little faster. That's all we want.
So, but the Kings, and it still exists though. And this is the team of the week. And this is, when you go on your team page and you look at your score and then you see what the top score was that week. Right. And it's the best team that could have been put together. Right. So the top team you could have assembled for that particular game week. And so you get some really funky formations as you go through this, Brandon. A lot of 4-5-1s and things that question our own addiction to a 3-4-3, right? You're like, why am I not just going 4-5-1 or I don't know, 3-5-2? It's really it's very interesting when you go through these and what you find. So, all right, let's kick things off, Brandon, with Game Week 17. This was the Boxing Day fixtures. Came right after the World Cup, very shortly after the World Cup. Kind of a shocker that some of these people were playing this closely after the World Cup. I mean, England had been knocked out like 2 weeks before. Mitro, Serbia had a very frustrating experience in the World Cup. But back they were. Trippier, of course, as well. And I'm just naming the players that were in the Kings of the Game Week. I mean, a lot of people came back right off the bat. Sure. And so when I think of Game Week 17, and I'll let you talk here in a second. When I think of Game Week 17, the thing that comes to mind right away for me is Alexander Mitrovic. And he was an incredibly popular pick for a lot of teams, because if you recall, Brandon, everyone had a chance to, they had unlimited transfers after the World Cup. You didn't have to use a wild card. It was just the game had paused for 6 weeks, and to get everybody back into it, you had unlimited transfers for the reset. And so he was very popular because they had a double game week a couple weeks after this. They had a nice run of fixtures. Looked like he was going to be ready to play. And then the day before, manager comes out and says, we're not sure. We don't think he's going to be ready. So hopefully in the next week or so, but we don't think he's going to be ready for Boxing Day. Of course, next day starts, gets 2 goals and an assist, has a terrific match, and finishes on 15 points. We all rush to buy him, at which point he proceeds to miss penalties like they're going out of style. It's yellow, like he gets yellow cards. He's getting battling injuries. We all captained him during double game week. It was just, it was a very stressful run, the Mitro run, Brandon. I finally didn't drop him until like 2 weeks ago. Somehow I'd had him for all of these weeks.
Well, we'll see if he plays again this season. Our new friend Chris Sutton was calling for a 10-match ban after what he did to Chris Kavanaugh in the FA Cup match this weekend. So, I mean, he's going to face at least a 4 to 5 match ban. And he scored 1 goal, Mitrovic has, since Gameweek 17. In that match in which he scored that 1 goal, he totaled 5 points for that match. Okay. So he's just been unownable in fantasy at that point. And also his form just in real life has pretty much disappeared. My memory of the Gameweek 17, and you see him here in Kings of the Game Week with his 13-pointer, is this was the coming out party for Solly March. Up till this point in the season, Solly had not scored a single goal for Brighton. He comes in, he starts against Southampton, gets a goal and an assist, and since then he's gone on to score 5 more goals, and he is just like one of the hottest mid-price mids in the game. So it's just interesting to see what that World Cup break did for some of these guys who have now, it feels like they've been in the fantasy discussion for much longer.
So I think there's a little bit of a comeback narrative here, and because March never really came back from anything because he was never that great of a fantasy asset. But Marcus Rashford was another player who we were all sort of a little on the fence about. I mean, it's easy to forget now, but it was not a done deal that Marcus Rashford was like an essential player. It was partially because they doubled early on that a lot of people were considering him, and I sort of reluctantly brought him in. I won't even pretend otherwise. I was like, well, all right, he's so cheap. Right, started the season at $6.5 million. Might as well just go for Rashford, and it just makes sense. I have a midfielder sized hole that I will use with him. And I think the other one is Kepa, and this was I was again, it took me a little while because I guess that's like there's a lot of redemption stories this year in general, right? Because you have March, who's a player I just really didn't consider to be a great fantasy asset. You have Kepa, who almost universally was considered to be a bit of a flop at Chelsea. Rashford seemed like maybe his best years at Man United were behind him. Maybe that's a little too extreme, but it kind of felt that way at times. And even Trippier, I guess. Although I feel like we're all pretty quick to catch on to his appeal. We were good with Trippier. All right, fine. I won't go that far. But I think there were really a handful of players that
Tim Ream. Had to you got to give it a shout for Tim Ream, who's in this Kings of the Game Week with a 14-pointer. He is very emblematic of that comeback narrative.
It's funny because Fulham, even though Mitro had a frustrating run, and that goal with the yellow card, if you remember, that yellow card knocked him out of. I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, but that yellow card knocked him out of the second leg of that double for Fulham, if you remember. It was a totally unnecessary yellow. But that was also during a great run for Fulham. I mean, Fulham basically made it clear there was no way they were going down in that January run. So, credit to them, December and January. All right, let's move on to Game Week 18, Brandon. What do you see here? What do you see with Game Week 18?
Well, I'm seeing lots of a few more oddballs. We've got Malacia and Wan-Bissaka. There is clearly a lot of injury and rotation happening in the Manchester United defense in Game Week 18. And then Crystal Palace having a banner week with Jordan Ayew on a 10-pointer and Olise on 12 here. So and Douglas Luiz, Paulinho. It's like revenge of the guys you will never have in your fantasy team. I think that the two guys, or let's just say 3 to 4 guys who are often in the conversation who make this week's Kings of the Game Week: Shaw, Odegaard, and then 2 Brentford players, and Raya and Tony. So those are guys that you would kind of expect to pop up from time to time. But otherwise, 18 is just a very random Kings week.
This is the cruddiest, I think, Kings of the Game Week that we're going to encounter. You can even see it in the total score, right? The week before that, it's 138 points, the highest score you can put together. Game Week 18, it's 114. Next Game Week's 139. One after that is 143. So far and away the crummiest, Brandon, of the restart game weeks. I don't even remember. I mean, clearly Man United kept a clean sheet, but the fact that Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, and Malacia all ended up on exactly 9 points. I want to go back and figure that one out.
I've got the rationale for you, Josh. Okay. Manchester United win 1-0 away at the Molineux. So you can tell very defensive game. Rashford gets the goal. Crystal Palace also win away against Bournemouth. So United and Palace do very well in the Kings of the Game because they're playing at that point in time the two worst defenses or worst teams in the division in Wolves and Bournemouth.
Well, there you go then. And Douglas Luiz, I feel like he pops up in these Kings of the Game weeks like once a season. You know, you get a little Luiz sighting from time to time in there. Yep. All right, well let's move on from that one then, Brandon. A forgettable. I feel like that even that I guess that would be the second run of matches during the festive fixtures, which is always the cruddiest one. Those are always the ones, Brandon, where if I'm staying in New York for the holidays that year, I'm popping over to the Black Horse at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's always like Leicester, Southampton, you know, some game where you're like, I really should go to a museum today, and somehow I'm drinking at a bar at 3:00 in the afternoon watching.
A lot of people watching these matches alone is what's happening.
There's a lot of
in Gameweek 18.
A lot of people are popping out a laptop and getting some emails done while these ones are on. All right, that brings us to Gameweek 19. I believe these were the New Year's fixtures. The player of the week for Gameweek 19 was Harold Danforth Canning, also known as Harry Kane, finished on 16 points. A lot of Spurs in there. The thing about these best teams you can put together is they cheat, Brandon. They'll often throw 4 players from a single team into this. But so we have Kane and Perisic from Spurs are on here. So not actually the case this time, but you have three from Fulham. Tim Ream again. Tim Ream's second appearance in Kings of the Game Week, Brandon.
Yeah, this is the West London derby where Fulham hosted Chelsea and won 2-1. So scenes definitely. And Spurs win 4-0 away at Palace. This was the match in which where Kane gets the brace and everyone's like kind of like, maybe I gotta get a Harry Kane back.
I know. And this is the one where it was 0-0 at halftime too. They had this remarkable second half where they absolutely destroyed them. Weird season for Spurs. I mean, I don't know how that 3-3 happened yesterday. That is one of the most unusual results of the season. I mean, I know that Spurs aren't great, but that just inexplicable. Like, how do you lose? Or I mean, that's a draw that feels like a loss. I said, how do you lose? But it felt like a loss. And then you've got Solly March again. So again, Brandon, we're seeing the second appearance from March, second appearance from Shaw, second appearance from your boy Tim Ream, our American cousin Tim Ream. It's kind of funny because I'm looking at the teams of the game, like they mark the players even if they're if they're out in game week 28 for some reason they still mark them as out in the game right now, and you can see Willian is red flagged here, as is Casemiro. So we've got multiple players in the game week,
as is Matt Doherty, who
suspension.
Matt Doherty is out because his contract has ended. So that's rather blunt from the FPL site.
That's kind of wild, isn't it? They don't employ him any longer. So it's Marcus Alonso.
Please take your
like
things and go.
Too. Marcus Alonso's like that too. It says left by mutual consent is what it says. I like that they keep him in the game though.
Sure. Very mutual. I'm very sure it was very mutual. Huh?
It'd be cool if there was just like a blank uniform right there. Like there was just like somebody had 14 points in game week 19. We don't know who it was. It was just like an empty vessel. All right, so that's and then Ferguson too. It's Brighton have really. I just feel like I got a little stuck in the mud when it came to the game week 25 wild card. It felt rushed. It felt unnecessary. And I feel like I have to just like take the L on this one because I think ultimately it was a pretty effective strategy. It would have looked even better if Liverpool hadn't won that match against Man United 7-0, right? If that's just a 1-0 win or something like that, I think that strategy looks really good right now as opposed to just pretty good.
We'll see what happens with Ferguson, though. So he makes the Kings of the Game Week in Game Week 19 with his goal and an assist, but he's only scored one goal in the Premier League since then in Game Week 21. I mean, he came out and shot the lights out in the FA Cup this weekend. So he's clearly like an incredible player for Brighton. Just like to see him do a little bit more in the fantasy space.
Undav scored today too, Brandon. So there's a little competition up front now for the Brighton men.
Healthy. It's healthy. Mm-hmm.
It's healthy. I think so too. It's like having a fiber in your breakfast. It's healthy. Game week 20, Brandon. The player of the week is Solly March's third appearance. Why?
Unbelievable.
I need to be looking at the Kings of the Game Week when I'm making my transfers, because this emerging Solly March narrative is I feel like we're sleeping.
It's pretty obvious when you think about it.
It's pretty obvious. He had an awesome season. So Solly March, this was you and I we watched that March game because that was. We were in New Orleans during that one. Yeah, exactly. The Liverpool, Solly March was amazing. I think he had a brace and could have scored about 5 in that one. It was really, and again, Liverpool on the road, just really struggling this season and kind of all of their away matches. But another big match for him. Mahrez is your classic 19 or 1. This is the Mahrez way, and because every year they try to talk us into Mahrez, Brandon. I feel like they try to pull on our coat and get us to turn around and look at Mahrez, and I don't want to look. It's like looking at the sun. I just don't want any part of it, and it never goes well when you look at the sun.
You have to look at Mahrez through one of those cereal boxes with like a pinhole for the light to get through. It's the only healthy way to look at Mahrez.
The only healthy way to do it, exactly. Maybe some kind of time lapse camera or something. Actually, this is a time lapse camera, Brandon, of the FPL season, which is the right way to look at it. It
really is. You got Brennan Johnson up front. Forrest occasionally rely on goals to win, and here he is. And I think this is what's interesting to me about Game Week 20 and the Kings is Dan Burn and Kieran Trippier, and I think this is sort of emblematic of sort of the scales tipping for Newcastle, where if you go back and listen to our Kings of the Game Week for the first half of the season, I'm sure it was just like Trippier and Almiron again and again and again. And Trippier with a 9-pointer. Already you're thinking 9 points is not quite enough, my friend, after what you've given us. And I don't think we see too much of Newcastle in the teams of the week after this. So it's kind of like the World Cup kind of zapped Newcastle of their Kings of the Game Week energy.
Yeah, they still could, pop up and snag one of those Champions League spots, but it does feel a little less likely now. I mean, in hindsight, getting the 2 points from the win at Forest, the very late goal there, and then Spurs drawing was huge. So and then Chelsea drawing too. Those were 2 insane draws that happened this weekend, Brendan. I cannot believe that Chelsea Everton match. Was it 2-2? Was it the final score for that one?
It was 2-2. And watching the first half, you're just and we both free hit Chilwell in and had Kepa in goal, and we were feasting on points because it was like Everton were not attacking. And the commentary even called this out when Everton started to string a few attacks together in the second half. Like, well, Chelsea just aren't used to defending in this match. This could be an issue. And it turned out to be a pretty big issue from that. And to go from Chilwell would have been on a 8-pointer, Kepa on a 6 to 7-pointer, and suddenly they're both on 1 point each. It's just like a crushing blow to free hits.
It really was. Arsenal conceding was not a great moment for myself either on the free hit, and you actually completely lucked out. Or whatever. Maybe you knew that Zinchenko was going to go off early, and how
did I luck
Arsenal
out?
Were going to concede.
He was still on when they conceded.
Oh, was he still on when they conceded? Okay, all right. So we didn't luck out. I thought for some reason in my head he came off before they conceded. All right. Well, we're both in misery. Misery loves company, Brandon. And I would say the free hit was definitely a flop. I mean, I just think it's I said earlier that I'm down 2 red arrows because of the strategy, but I honestly wonder if. I'd be down a lot more if I hadn't actually made these moves.
This is the thing. Yes. This is the thing.
Exactly. It may be that the real move would have been, and I don't mean to meander too much here, but the real move may have been to wildcard in 26 and just because and I think wildcard in 27 was almost like, okay, I need to correct the mistake. I don't think I ever would have bench boosted in 27, so I don't feel bad about that part of it. But I think I found myself a little bit on the back foot as a result, and I think that it's come back to hurt me a little bit. So anyway, let's move on to Game Week 21. Who's our player of the week for Game Week 21, Brandon?
Our player of the week is Erling Brute Haaland with 17 points. He plays for Manchester City, and just to cast your mind back to when Manchester City were playing in Game Week 21, they played on Sunday against Wolves, and that was just an easy hat trick for Mr. Haaland.
That's right. Steady as she goes, just nice and easy.
And this, I feel like looking at this Kings list, it's how I feel about Man City this season. Haaland is here with 17 points. Even though they kept a clean sheet, there is not a single other Manchester City player, not even people who provided those many assists to Haaland. Nothing, nobody. The only City player worth having for fantasy is Haaland. And nobody here really, well, actually, there's one man who holds a candle to Haaland in Game Week 21, and it's Jared Bowen. And was this a moment, Josh, where West Ham started sort of flirting with our emotions? They're like, hey,
I think
remember how fun this was?
Yeah. This is the moment when I thought they sacked David Moyes. I think that's when I started crediting the radio performance to the new manager bump. I just somehow got in my head that he had been sacked.
Yeah, but again, like Brighton is an already emerged theme here. We've got Matoma with 10 and Estupiñán making a much deserved appearance in the Kings with a 9-pointer. So just Brighton ever present. Name this Bournemouth player, Josh, in our midfield, 10-pointer, king of the game week, Anthony. I'll Venmo you $5 if you can tell me Anthony's first name.
Isn't it Jadon? Jaidon. Is that how you say his first name?
Okay, $5 coming to you right after this podcast. Good pull. All right, nice. Know your cherries.
I think he's had some nice moments this season, and I clearly, Bournemouth have been way too inconsistent for us to really talk about them at all on this pod. Solanke is fun. He gets involved. Doesn't actually score goals, but he's fun. He's in the mix. I like a player who's in the mix, Brandon, and that's my style. I like if you're mixing it up, you're scrapping, then you're probably a Josh Landon kind of guy. All right, let's move on to Game Week 22, Brandon. Ooh, this was a big one. This was the week when you and I triple captained Marcus Rashford. One of the the best moment of the season for both of us. And 60 points on a TC. That is a great return. Bruno came through with 12 points as well. Just a really solid. I think this was the first time I cracked the top 10K was when Game Week 22. It was a fun one. So any other thoughts on 22?
Well, I remember the debate going into 22 with the Manchester United double. People were starting to build a little bit more trust with Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah.
Well, you and I both opted for Rashford at the end of the day. Bruno does make the list with 12 points, so that's at least good to back up at least my thinking there.
Yeah.
And Brentford, we haven't really mentioned their defense much. Ben Mee and Rico Henry are here alongside Wolverhampton. Less said about Wolverhampton, the better. But Brentford's defense definitely deserving of an appearance. And Mbomo, if you look up front, let's see what was the fixture for Brentford this week. We're looking at home hosting Southampton, of course. You could have guessed.
There you go. Yeah, and I think that Nanto, he was one of the double game weekers for Leeds, and that was a bold pull. I feel like a few people in some of our mini leagues brought him in, and it's always fun when I think I sometimes get frustrated with double game week strategy because it feels like you're not really. Fantasy at its best, I feel like, should involve some element. I mean, this is my perspective. Many disagree. The more data inclined disagree with me. But what I enjoy is sort of watching a lot of games and thinking, I suppose, about the Premier League and in fantasy, and sort of basing at least some of it on what I'm sort of seeing, and that's just part of the fun for me. And I feel like, but sometimes you go the other way where you're like, no one would regularly bring in Nanto, right? That's just not a move that people really strongly considering if they played in a single. But sometimes you just go for it, right? And you bring in someone like this in a double, and it pans out. And he finished on 11. And so it is always really fun when this kind of 1 week punts really come off.
Well, speaking of unfun, I'm reminded, looking at Game Week 22, of Tarkowski. James Tarkowski, he gets a 15-pointer, scoring the one and only goal against Arsenal. Like the one defeat Arsenal has had this in my short-term memory. And this led me to get James Tarkowski, which was just a complete nightmare for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So thanks for nothing, James.
Yeah, I got 1 8-pointer out of him, and then he immediately got a 9-pointer the week after I dropped him. So that's his classic. That's you never know what you're getting. It's a lesson to all of us. You don't overinvest. I mean, at least know what you're investing in. Brighton, Brentford, those are quality mid-table sides. That's a quality investment right there. But the spine of it, maybe not the spine exactly, but the I don't know, the red blood cells, something that's not quite as important as I guess it's all pretty important if it's part of your body, but
I'm not a doctor, man.
Yeah, the flesh of your team, Brandon, needs to be made up with quality and affordable players from mid-table teams. That's true. I didn't really know where to go with that one. So your spine, of course, is your best players, but something else, right? I don't know, the vertebrae. Is that maybe?
I don't know. I would go feet and hands, something that's super useful like that. But that's fine.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted to get very medical there. So anyway, Ian Acho has popped up. I don't know. It's so funny to see him at all in these things because that Leicester team has just been so ridiculous. I don't know what to say. I mean, I want to like Leicester. You and I had one of probably my favorite match going experience was when you and I went to see the King Power to watch Leicester play. Not necessarily the match itself, which went terribly for me fantasy wise, and I let it bleed into my real life enjoyment. But the atmosphere at the stadium was heaven to me. I was like, this is what I want. This is exactly what everyone's idea of an English stadium experience is like, right? Which is that you go to work. It was a Monday night game. Like you go to work, you come home, and then you meet all your friends, and everybody was just saying hi to each other outside the stadium, and it felt like a total family vibe. Inside, you had kids and parents, and everybody just sort of mingling together, and the stakes were high, but not too high. It was just wonderful, and so it's maybe sort of a lifelong fan of Leicester, but this season has really tested my. They have not been fun to watch, and it's just fantasy.
I'm sure lifelong supporters are wondering what's going on with this club. Sure. But I have come over the course of the season to have more appreciation for Leicester after what has happened to Jesse Marsch and Patrick Vieira at Leeds and Crystal Palace, respectively, of just like, hey, things aren't going exactly according to plan. Let's just sack the manager and devil may care. Brendan Rodgers has been steering some very choppy waters since the start of the season, and Leicester just said, you know what? Everybody knows what they're doing. They're still in a relegation battle. Who knows what's going to happen? But I feel like you're putting Leicester in a much better position than you are Palace and Leeds at this point. It's just like putting Crystal Palace in this level of chaos. It's like from the frying pan into the fire. I think for them.
It's funny because I do agree with you, and then I was like, and it's like and then I looked at it, I was like, wow, Leicester have taken 1 point from 15. It's like I thought they had done a little better than that over the last 5.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting. Just we won't know until the season's over, but I just think you're gonna bet on the stability, the continuity over anything else. What you will also bet on in Game Week 23 was Manchester City and the double. A lot of jealous managers who did not triple captain Rashford the previous game week opted to go Haaland and were given half the points as Rashford in the previous game week. So Haaland in the double gets 10 points, but it is just a pick-em amongst Manchester City midfielders with the double. De Bruyne with 15. Mahrez was a popular pick in this game week when he was in Pep's good graces for a brief moment. Grealish with a 13-pointer, and Rodri, eternal weirdo, with 12 points. So it's really an incredible week for City ownership.
Yeah, I had KDB in Holland for this game week, and they really carried my team. Looking back, and I did pull it up real quick. Oh yeah, Luke Shaw, Brendan. I had Mr. Luke Shaw and came through as well.
I had a Kanji who got a whopping 2 points in a double.
Yeah.
And I put Luke Shaw on my bench. Why am I looking at this? This is horrible. This is putting me in a bad mood.
Well, there was something about that was the week when Pep, we all sort of lost our patience with him defensively, and of course I think they've gone on a run of clean sheets since then. Like the classic FPL, the moment we all finally threw up our hands and gave up on Pep is the moment when he, I guess they did concede to Newcastle, okay, but it's just the 2 clean sheets in the last 3 matches. All right, so but game week 23. As you can see, they've cheated once again, Brendan. They've thrown 5 Man City players into this game, the best game week of the best team for the game week. Iheanacho, is that the second week in a row? What the heck, Iheanacho? Game week 22 and 23. What is going on? I have not even briefly
the continuity I was talking about.
Season. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because eventually it's going to translate into wins. Where we think it's going to happen.
I think so.
All right, game week 24. Let's see. Do you remember game week 24, Brandon? That would have been, February 18th. Okay, so just about a month ago was game week 24. Top scorer that week was Seamus Coleman. Scored a brilliant goal that week, an Aguero-esque angle. It was like he basically was on the, it was 40 yards away and just angled it beautifully. Probably goal of his career.
Yeah, let's see. Was that against Leeds? Yeah, it was against Leeds. So, he's the top points getter. But I feel like it's kind of unfair that Coleman is given player of the week. I wonder what the tiebreaker is, because Rashford and Emerson Royale at Spurs also get 15 points. So why does Coleman get the...
I think it's the top BPS. I think that's how they do it.
Okay. All right, fine. Well, whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
James Ward-Prowse makes his second appearance in the last few weeks, and he seems to be king of the 10-pointer. If I go back to, let's see, he got 15 points in game week 20 when he last appeared, and I think he had 10 points this week, game week 28. So well done to James Ward-Prowse fans.
Yep.
Some very random guys. Bernardo at City, Abricio at Eze, the 9-pointer.
The best one, though, you're sleeping on the best one, which is Chris Wood. Is the only forward that cracks the team of the best game week for 24. Chris Wood like this 8 points up front.
Yeah, I think 8 points. This must be, maybe there's a rule with Kings of the Game Week that they have to feature a forward, and that's how Chris Wood gets in here, because
it's crazy that only that 8 is the highest score for any forward for that. That's a very low score. That's and I think that's the only goal that Chris Wood has scored, 2 for 4. So let me pull it up here and confirm that. I'm seeing. Oh wait, hold the phone. 3 goals. Chris Wood has scored 3 goals. So congrats to him. I forgot about all those
good
goals.
Good job, Chris Wood.
Goal fest. Yeah. All right. So that's this is a funky one. Trent pops up there as well. It's by the way, do you think I really don't like the Liverpool away kits, and I feel like Trent in particular looks bad in those kits. The last time I saw him wearing one of those, now, like when I think of Trent right now in my head, I think of him in one of those kits because he looks like he's wearing a hospital gown. There's something about the gray look of that. They're not very tight either, and it looks like he's wearing scrubs, like he's about to perform surgery or something like that. It's not a great look, I gotta say.
I think with his right foot is enough of a wand that I'd trust him to perform heart surgery on me with his right foot. So bring it on. Wow. I think it's a good
Liverpool supporters podcast now.
I've actually been thinking a fair amount about Trent, because if Saliba ends up having some sort of a long-term issue, or ahead of me having to get rid of Luke Shaw for United's game week 32 blank, I'm like, Trent, because Liverpool are home hosting Nottingham Forest in 32, and then they'll probably have a double where they play at Anfield in both matches, Spurs-Fulham. As you mentioned earlier, Josh, Liverpool are really only worth their salt when they're playing at Anfield. I think he is going to be in our thoughts again soon.
I think that's possible. I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating watching him play this season. I mean, it's just like he's so chaotic. I don't know. I mean, you're right. I mean, fantasy wise, it isn't necessarily relevant, but I feel like he's not quite on it this season. I would probably opt for someone cheaper. But anyway, let's save that for our Game Week 32 pod, Brandon, which will be like, I don't know, 7 weeks from now, whenever that that rolls around. Brings us to Game Week 25. This was a big one. The top score that you could have had this week was 177 points. Very painful for me to see Gabriel Martinelli there. He was a player I dropped on a hit so that I could finally bring in Saka. And I mean, it kind of worked out, I guess, because I did captain Saka for the game week, but a very interesting game week. Arsenal doubled, obviously, and kind of everyone came through for that team. I mean, you have 5 players from Arsenal, and 6 actually, including Ramsdale. The lowest score among them being Ben White with 13 points. So you really couldn't go wrong with almost any combination.
Even Odegaard, Saliba, who got 12 points.
Yeah, Saliba had 12, which is still pretty good. And then Odegaard, who didn't crack this team, but he scored a goal in that as well. And I think he must have finished around 12 points as well.
Wild stuff.
So, yeah, wild stuff.
Yeah, Martinelli, I guess this is the moment, roundabout the moment where we're like, okay, we should have never given up on Gabriel Martinelli. He never left us. And he continues to score through Game Week 28. So I love this man.
I do too. I know. Just he's really, I feel like, classic FPL overthinking with him. And and then Virgil van Dijk too, a 24-pointer. That is a massive return for him. It's to score 24 points and not be the player of the week shows you just how high scoring that game week was.
You can't hold a candle to Junior Firpo with 15 points.
Wow. Probably got to be the first time in all his time at Leeds that he's cracked a Kings of the Game Week, Brandon.
Better to burn out than fade away, Junior. Time to go.
So this was Game Week 25, and Game Week 25 was a double game week. It ended at midweek, and suddenly we were in a position where a lot of people started to think, you know what, it just makes sense to wildcard now. And if I had a couple more days, I might have done it. I don't want to keep prostrating myself about this decision, but it does feel like I think it was just hard for me to pivot that soon after kind of have all these players that delivered for me. I was like, dropping all these Liverpool players right before Game Week 26. It just didn't really make sense to me, and sort of it worked out in the short term, right? Which is that Game Week 26 was the Liverpool week. It was. Are they back? Are they good again? And I don't really know. I mean, what do you say about a team that beats Man United 7-0 at home and then loses 1-0 away to Bournemouth the next week? Like, what do you say about a team like that, Brendan? How do you explain that? I would love to know.
They're not good away from home. I think they have poor away form is how I might. I think it's not just any team. I think the reason why it's curiosity is because it's Liverpool, and Liverpool have just been so unstoppable for 5 or 6 years at this point. And the switch in form was so dramatic that I think it's left us all very curious, and to see it slip away so easily in the Champions League. I mean, they were kind of they were not a favored team in the Champions League last season. They still made it to the final against Real Madrid. So it's just that good of a team. And this has been the question all season, right? It's like, what happened to Liverpool? End of cycle? Too exhausted? Is it Sadio Mane? What's up with Klopp? And I think, as far as we can tell, just from a fantasy perspective, is don't rely on Liverpool when they are away from Anfield. And when they play at Anfield, dreams can come true. Yeah. Much like they did with Salah in this week with 21 points. Yeah. Salah came through. Gakpo scored a brace. And Darwin scored a brace as well. It was just a very a pretty awesome match for all
all the Liverpool players. And they kept a clean sheet as well, too. So anyone who had Trent or Van Dijk came through on this one. So Danny Ward, in his farewell appearance, Brandon picks up the pen save, and James Ward-Prowse finishes on 11 points. And that may be the last time we ever see him in the Premier League. So, I guess he did play in 27.
What's the story there? Do you know anything? What are the rumors?
It's just got to be how poorly Leicester are playing, right? And he hasn't been good either, so it's like you might as well just try something different.
Yeah,
I guess. So. I mean, it's not like So, and then I guess they got points for the first time in 5 weeks, so they probably stick with Iverson. It's kind of like Steele, right? It's like although I mean, in Brighton's case, they were playing pretty well, so that one was a little more surprising. The bringing in Steele. So. And then let's see. What else do we have in Game Week 26? Anything interesting? We have Wes Fofana injured again.
Another Brennan Johnson appearance.
Yeah, it's Brennan Johnson. I know. I briefly considered him on my Game Week 27 wild card, and might have been the way to go. I don't know. I did talk myself into Solanke, and we'll all laugh about that in a couple of weeks when he blanks in the double. But at the moment, Johnson looks good. And let's move on to Game Week 27, though, Brennan. You and I both wild carded into probably a worse team. Maybe not in the end, because the second half.
I didn't get 130 points. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. The second half of Game Week 27 did come through for all of the double orders. It really came through for anyone who bench boosted. Incredible week for bench boosters. Kind of the dream week, right? Which is that all these teams double, and then all of your really good players who have one fixture come through as well. Mm-hmm. And Gabriel, Trossard, and then all the doublers, Matoma, March. You actually couldn't go wrong with any of them, because McAllister's, I think he finished on 11 points as well. Matoma, March, McAllister, and then Ivan Toney picks up 13, a miracle assist. Brendan, a 5-point assist doubled, or no, I guess 6, right? It's more like a 12-pointer late in that game. Incredible.
Yeah, I'm looking at my bench, and Odegaard, Saliba, Botman, and Danny Ward. If I can do math, that's 18 points. I don't know. Let's see how I do next week. We'll see how I do. But yeah, I had kind of I tried to fade Brighton in 27, and it didn't really work. Actually, more than Brighton, I tried to fade the Brentford defense, and that generally worked, because I think my logic is kind of like, I see my logic reflected back at me here in the Kings of the Game Week. No Brighton defenders. It's and Toney is the only Brighton player, or Brentford. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So maybe that was in a sense the right decision for me to make.
They kept the clean sheet, though. I think that was really the thing, right? Was keeping the clean sheet in the second fixture was really what.
It only counts if you make the Kings, Josh.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a blank slate when it comes to Kings of the Game Week, and we're starting fresh here. So let's move on to our final game week, which is Game Week 28, the week that just happened. Pedro Porro scored a fun goal. No one has ever been more open in the Premier League than Pedro Porro was when Son slid that pass through to him. It was incredible. Mm-hmm. I don't think everyone just forgot. It was amazing. Like, I feel like you just never see someone like the team switch off that much on a player. It was kind of remarkable.
Well, Son did a remarkable job finding him with that pinpoint pass. So I think that did help a lot. But it's true. Pedro Porro will never score a more enjoyable, more open goal. He still almost can try. He kept launching the ball over the frame, and then he adjusted his sights just enough to roof it. A beautiful goal.
Looked great.
Tyrone Mings with a 12-pointer. He assisted my beloved Emi Buendia. Tyrone Mings suddenly becomes one of those hindsight wildcard players. And you think about Aston Villa. Yeah, Villa, they do double in 29, both away fixtures. But then they have a nice run leading into that Game Week 32 blank when Villa do play. They are away Brentford, but they have Forest and Newcastle both at home. So I think Tyrone Mings is definitely one to consider if you're thinking about moves to make over the break.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and good. Yeah, Martinez popping up here as well. I think, I have to admit, I got a little caught up in NCAA tournament world. This is always a tough game week for me, Brennan, the NCAA tournament game week, because I really love the NCAA basketball tournament. I get really sucked into it. All the matches are happening, and I end up maybe not I let my eye off the ball FPL wise a little bit this week more than any other week, and so yeah, I mean, in hindsight, you're right. It makes so much sense, even on a free hit, to have brought him in, right? And they're playing Bournemouth at home. They've been reasonably strong defensively of late, and it would have made some sense. I think even then I may not have gone for Mings. I may have gone for someone like Matty Cash and just hoped to get a little more.
Or Moreno, who's been playing really well on the left. So they have lots of different options for Villa. I think for those looking to solve a goalkeeper problem too, Emi Martinez is 4.9. I think he's definitely one to consider. But then you've got a real potpourri across the midfield in the Kings here for 28. So. Saka, of course. The one true king, and then you've got Abdel Decore, Theo Walcott, Douglas Luiz, and don't remember his first name, Jensen. Matthias Jensen at Brentford. You're like the first name king today. What wild, and then Shea Adams and Isak up front. This is definitely a blank game week. If I'm looking.
Yeah, this is a real what might have been free hit. Looking at this right now, Brandon, I'm seeing so many fun moves that you and I could have made, right? You know, Villa
would not have had any of these guys. None of them.
Maybe one Villa
Walcott?
defender.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I got a little thrown by the Almiron injury late. All along I was planning to have Almiron, and then when he got injured, it sort of I kind of panicked a little bit, and I feel like if I had thought about it a little more calmly, I would have maybe been a little more creative with my move. I ended up bringing in Mudryk, who didn't even play a single minute in this match, which just goes to show, like, nobody really knows who's going to start in these games, right? Everyone had him pegged to start in that match, and doesn't play a minute. So it's all guesswork who's actually going to start in these games. And I mean, educated guesswork. I'm not saying these people are making it up completely, but it's we don't really know until the game starts.
Sure.
So so a weird one, kind of low scoring as well. And congrats to the Saka captainers. That was clearly the smart move there, and comes through with 18 points. I'm certain everyone who captained him ended up in a green arrow. And that is your third quarter of the FPL season, Brandon. We saw a lot of doubles, a lot of wild, like massive returns. I feel like that was like a big story. It was like a lot of popular captain picks that got like between 15 and 20 points. And that's really... so it's been kind of a swingy FPL season, I think, as a result of that. A little bit unlike last year, where I felt like everyone was kind of marching in lockstep. I didn't feel like we saw as many variations. I think part of it was because you had some postponements, and I don't know. But I feel like this year it's like we've all kind of there's been a few different ways to go multiple times, right? You could go for Holland or Rashford, right? There's like certain players you could opt for in certain game weeks, and I think that's made things a little more fun. So. That's the pod. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you want to support the podcast, we'd really appreciate it. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Yeah, thank you to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, to Big Gaffer, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wegner, Lodal, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Rich Evans, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Lee Hickman, Volker Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, our manager of the month, James Conroy, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Hertzig, Heath Cram, Roberto Morals, Thomas Tislov, and Noah and Louise. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media. And for all of our, official details, unofficial as well, go to alwayscheating.com.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. See you next week. Bye.